Hey everybody, welcome back to the next chapter. I'm B9. This is chapter 1, Enlightenment. Last week I gave an overview of some of the things I hope to accomplish with this podcast. To be honest, it was a mess and didn't go the way I planned. So here's the hoping for something more substantial today. Like I said, the next chapter is going to be about the past, present, and future. I also mentioned that my little brother Jared floated the idea of naming it I Might Talk About My Ex. And to a certain extent, he was right. Undoubtedly, there's no way for me to talk about my past or my present without talking about her. I also talked about narcissism and how it fit her to the T. And it dawned on me that, like myself at the time, a lot of people may not completely understand what a narcissist is, what their behavior is like, and obviously how to deal with them. So this week, we're going to talk about what a narcissist is, their behavioral patterns, and I'll talk about my experiences. This will be the beginning of my story and hopefully an opportunity for you to educate yourself. So the first thing I did was re-educate myself so that I can give you a quick idea of who we're dealing with. The Mayo Clinic describes narcissistic personality disorder as a mental condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. They need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. Now, this part's very important. Make sure you listen to this. People with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others. But behind the mask of extreme confidence, they're not sure of themselves or their self-worth and are easily upset by the slightest criticism. People with NPD may be generally unhappy and disappointed when not given the special favors or admiration they believe they deserve. Now, WebMD has a list of behaviors you can expect from a narcissist. The first one, manipulative or controlling behavior. A narcissist will at first try to please you and impress you, but eventually their own needs will always come first. They will try to keep people at a certain distance in order to maintain control. They may exploit others to gain something for themselves. The second one is need for admiration. People with this behavior need to feel validation from others and often brag or exaggerate their accomplishments for recognition. They also like to feel appreciated to boost their own ego. The next one is lack of empathy. Unwilling or unable to empathize with the needs, wants, or feelings of other people. Now, the next part here, this one's another important part. This also makes it difficult for them to take responsibility for their own behavior. So keep that one fresh in your mind because that's an important one. It makes it difficult for them to take responsibility for their own behavior. We're going to touch on that. Arrogance. They see themselves as superior to others, so they may become rude or abusive when they don't receive the treatment they think they deserve. Now, WebMD also lists things to do if you're in a relationship with a narcissist. And then they're going to have a little list of things that they suggest you don't do. And I have a difference of opinion on some of these, but I'm going to read over them and then we'll get into that in a little bit. So the to-dos: educate yourself, create boundaries, speak up for yourself, watch your wording, stay calm, create a support system, bring in a counselor. Now the don'ts. Don't argue or confront. Don't direct them. Don't expect them to see your point of view. Don't expect deep, meaningful communication. And don't go over past issues. Each of these bullet points has more detail on their websites, and I've included the links to the Mayo Clinic and WebMD sites that I use in this description. So let's talk about some of these things and my experiences and my opinions on some of the don'ts. But remember, I am not a doctor, counselor, or psychiatrist. I've just been through a lot of shit. All right, now we're going completely off script. I am going to talk to you about my opinions and my experiences. We've gone over all the notes and everything that I wanted to talk about. So, um, I do actually want to talk about some of the to-dos because I think there are some valid points there. The first one: educate yourself. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you plan on staying with that person, you can't live without them, then it's very important for you to educate yourself. Um, there's so much information out there to try to prepare you for what you're going to deal with. Um, so, the best thing you can do is learn as much as you can and try to get a better understanding of what you're dealing with. Um, and hopefully, you have better luck than I did because I came to the conclusion after educating myself that I had done everything humanly possible to try to help my then wife, now ex-wife, and it just it was killing me. It changed who I was to try to help her. So if you can educate yourself and get a complete understanding of who you're dealing with, go for it. Try your hardest. I'm all for people trying to be happy, but in my experience, they make it extremely difficult and you're fighting an uphill battle. So you have to be willing to put in the work. The next do was create boundaries. I think the idea of creating boundaries is great. Um, the people that you're in a relationship with, they're going to create all kinds of boundaries that they dare you to cross. They don't want you to come across those boundaries at all. But the second you start creating boundaries, they've got a real problem with that. They're going to put their if this is the line, they're going to step over that line as often as possible, and it's because they're testing you. They're trying to find out how much control over you they have. They want to know, how far can I go? How many buttons can I push and still get away with it? So, my opinion is, try to create those boundaries, but don't expect much from them. The next bullet point was speak up for yourself. I know it's easy to not want to fight. You don't want to get into an argument with them. They attack you. Sometimes they make you feel like shit. They belittle you. They devalue you. They make you feel like you're not important. You're less of a person, less of a man, whatever. Speak up for yourself. You have to fight back. Words are strong, and your feelings are important too. And if you don't speak up for yourself, you're allowing them to mentally abuse you. Basically, you're letting them get inside your head and suppressing your own feelings. And somebody like me, it's easy for me to bottle things up. I can take a lot. I'm a big guy. I got plenty of room. So I hold a lot of things in. But what I learned was it's important to get things out. So definitely speak up for yourself. Don't just sit back and take their shit. You don't have to do that. You're worth more than that. All right. Um, the next part, watch your wording. Now, when speaking up for yourself, sometimes it's kind of hard to watch your wording. I struggle with that. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I think I'm pretty intelligent, but in the heat of the moment, I'm gonna say some shit. You might not like the shit that I'm gonna say, but I'm still gonna say the shit. So you just gotta deal with it. And when you're dealing with a narcissist, that might not be the best way to handle it. You got to be careful about what you say to a narcissist because they think that you're attacking them when in reality you're just trying to stick up for yourself. So the wording is important, but in the heat of the moment, it's probably going to be the last thing on your mind. Stay calm. That was the next bullet point. I am a pretty calm guy. I don't get riled up very easily. I am very protective of the people I care about. So if you ask my family or friends anything about me being calm, they might think that's a joke. But the reality of it is, I am, for the most part, a very calm person. And I play defense. So if you attack me, then I become defensive. And that's when it's hard for me to stay calm. Create a support system. I think having a support system is a great idea. There is absolutely no way that you survive this situation unscathed, unharmed, mentally intact, and completely happy without having a support system. And I'll be honest with you, that is where I failed because I had a support system in place. I had people I could go to, I had people I could talk to, and I only let them know the things that I wanted them to know because it was important to me to maintain who I was in their eyes. Like some of my best friends, I feel like if I told them everything that was going on, they were going to look at me as less of a person. Now, they're not. These are my brothers. They love me and I love them. We've been thick and thin together. We've had each other's back for 20 plus years. They wouldn't have judged me, but they also probably would have told me something that I didn't want to hear at the time. And so that is part of the reason why you keep those secrets and you don't confide in the people that you should. So that's where I failed. There was a lot of things that I could have talked about that probably would have helped me, that probably would have helped me get out of the relationship sooner had I gone to these people and been more open about the situation. You know, giving part of the story isn't giving the story. It's only creating more problems because you don't know what's going to happen next. You're not thinking clearly, and the people that are there to help you think clearly, you're not giving them the opportunity to do what you went to them for. You're not letting them do their job. So you have to be willing to open up and talk to your support system. You have to have a support system in place, whether it's a friend or a parent or a cousin, whatever. Have somebody that you trust, that you can open up to, that can help you. A mentor, whatever. Find that person. Bring in a counselor. I think counseling is a great idea. When I was married, we decided, well, she was already seeing a counselor, but I decided that maybe I needed to see a counselor because I was struggling with a lot of my emotions. Like it was hard for me to work through so many different things that were happening because between work and parenting and then dealing with her, I was getting worn out and exhausted. So she had her counselor. I started to see a counselor. And then our counselors got together and came up with the idea that the four of us should sit down and try to figure some things out because they knew right away it just wasn't right. Now, what they did, it was a great idea at the time. They started to assign homework. They gave me things that I could work on. Like one of her complaints was, oh, he doesn't give me money. Well, I'm paying all the bills. I'm the one working. I buy everything that we need for the house. I buy everything that we need for the kids. She's constantly sending me to the store. So it wasn't like it was a big deal to say, here's $200 to put in your purse. You've got a debit card. I didn't need to do that. So what they had me do was start to give her a weekly allowance, which blew my mind because I'm still, paying everything else. But I gave her the weekly allowance like I was supposed to. And keep in mind, she was working. She'll tell you that she wasn't because she was working under the table, but she was working. But that's really the only homework that they gave me. And so after a couple sessions, she started to realize that she was getting more homework than I was. And so that became a topic of conversation in one of the sessions. And she blew up when they didn't come right out and say it, but they kind of guided the conversation to try to get her to understand that the reality of it is, in this situation, you're the problem. He's doing what he's supposed to do. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. And you're creating these conflicts. When she heard that, she got up and walked out. But again, I think counseling is a great idea. I've got my daughter in counseling to work through some of her emotions about the divorce, her relationship with her mom now. Right around the time that the divorce was finalized, we had a lot of death in our family. My aunt passed away on the sidewalk while I was doing CPR on an Easter Sunday, and my kids were there watching as me and my brother-in-law tried to resuscitate her. So they struggled with that. A little over a month later, their uncle was brutally killed in New York, in the Bronx. And they had a good relationship with him. They didn't get to see him as often as I'd like, but the very last time they saw him, he took him out on a shopping spree. He spoiled them. He loved them. They loved him. And he's gone. And it was senseless. But if you ever get a chance and you like jazz music, look up my cousin Lawrence. Lawrence Low Leathers, 2-time Grammy-winning drummer. So yeah, I got off topic there. So there was a lot of death, and then maybe 2 months after Lawrence was killed, my great aunt who helped raise me passed away. She raised a lot of us in my family. She was the one that was cooking us dinner when our moms were working second shift, things like that. And then 10 days later, her baby sister, who was more like a grandma to me than she was a great aunt. She was my grandma's sister, but she was more like a grandma to me than she was anything else. We had a really special bond. She passed away, and she had been in a coma for about a year. So we had all these things happening at one time, and this kid is trying to process her emotions from her parents splitting up, and then her parents being divorced, and then her uncles killed, and her great aunts die within 10 days of each other. She witnessed her other aunt pass away, and the home dynamic changed. She went from her mom being here every day, although there was times where it felt like she wasn't here because she slept a lot. She was in bed a lot of the time. We'll get into that at a later date. But so my daughter was kind of struggling with, how do I work through these emotions? So I put her in counseling, and she enjoys it. And I ended up going back into counseling myself. And actually, this show is one of the reasons, counseling is one of the reasons that I wanted to do this, is because my counselor keeps telling me, you need to do something for yourself. You need to have a hobby. You need to find a way to relax. You need to vent. You need to do something that makes you feel important. And I think this is a way for me to do that. This is going to be my outlet on how I help other people, how I occupy my time, and hopefully do some good, because that's what I want to do. All right. So this is where we're going to get into kind of some of the tricky things. We're going to talk about the don'ts. They said, don't argue or confront. Well, if you're anything like me, the confront part is going to be difficult. Now, if I figure out that you've done something wrong, or you've contradicted something that we've agreed on, or you've lied to me, I'm going to confront you. Now, it might not be in the tone of I'm pissed off, but I'm going to let you know that I know that you did something wrong and that you lied to me. That's going to happen. Don't argue. We're dealing with narcissists. They thrive on arguments. Like, that's all I can say on that. Like, you're not going to win. That's what they're there for. It's almost like their job is to argue. They're not complete unless they're starting a fight. My ex literally told me she would go out of her way to try to piss me off so that we could argue. She would find things to make me mad. She would nag me to get me upset. She literally admitted to it. Excuse me, my throat's getting dry. It says, don't direct them. Don't tell them what to do. Okay, fair enough. I never set out to try to boss my wife around. That wasn't my goal. She claims that I did that, but with the types of things she was doing, the way she was acting, it was difficult to watch without trying to give her a sense of direction and try to put her on the right path. Because in my mind, I had two goals. I had to help her, and I had to make sure that my kids had a mom. So to tell us not to direct them, that's kind of a difficult thing. And I would say that is going to be based off of the situation. So you're going to have to be observant and do your best to try to know the timing. Like, is this the right time for me to direct her in this situation? Because otherwise, you're just going to end up back where we just talked about, and it's going to become an argument. The next don't was expect them to see your point of view. Even if they admit that they understand what you're saying or they see your point of view, they don't. Believe me when I tell you that they are simply saying that to get you to shut the fuck up. They do not want to hear what you're saying. They could care two fucks about what you're talking about. All they care about is ending the conversation and talking about what they want to talk about or going to do what they want to do. You are never going to get them to truly see your point of view. And I know that sounds negative, but it's the honest to God truth. At least in my opinion. And remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a counselor. I'm just somebody who's been through a lot of shit. The next don't expect deep, meaningful communication. Well, these kind of all go together. How can you expect a deep and meaningful communication? They don't want to communicate. They want to talk and they want you to listen. Nothing you say is important. Nothing you say is going to matter in their eyes. All they care about is themselves and what you can do for them. Nothing else matters. So there is no communication. It is one-sided. I said this many times to my ex that it was a one-sided relationship. I was putting in all the work. I was doing all the things that a husband should try to do. I was doing my absolute best to be a good man and be a good father and be a good husband, a good worker, a good son, good brother, good uncle, good friend, all those things. I tried it all. And I tried to communicate how I was feeling about things with her. I tried to get her to understand my point of view on things. None of that stuff works. Those two things are all one and the same. You cannot have a meaningful conversation with a narcissist and expect to get a good reaction because they don't give a shit. You are not important to them. The only one they care about is themselves. And unfortunately, in my situation, I'm starting to see that she doesn't even want to have meaningful communication with her own kids. Their feelings don't matter. We'll get into that at a later point. Going over past issues. Narcissists, when you bring up past issues, are kind of a weird, fun thing to look at, because they will bring up things that you've done a million times over. They can talk about, oh, you said you were going to do this, you did this, you did that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. They'll bring it up over and over again, and they will nag you, and they won't let you forget, and they'll try to make you feel like shit about it. But if you bring up one thing about the past, they don't want to hear it. Why are you even bringing that up? I don't want to talk about this. Leave me alone. Why don't you go somewhere? Find something to do. They don't want to hear about what they did, because it's easier for them to deflect off of themselves. They don't want to talk about their own behavior. And that brings us back. So that piece from WebMD said that it was difficult for them to take responsibility for their own behavior. And I think difficult's an understatement. They refuse to take responsibility for their own behavior. It's like they believe in their mind that they did nothing wrong. My ex will literally try to convince me that she's innocent of something that I could have witnessed her do that was wrong. Shorthand or short story, basically right now she's not seeing our kids because she made a decision to be with somebody that I didn't feel comfortable with the kids being around. And the very last time she contacted the kids, she tried to make it out like they made the decision. To take responsibility for it. She deflects everything, and every narcissist is going to do something similar to that. They can't take responsibility for their own actions. They have to deflect. And it's mind-boggling, because like, it can be obvious to us, you're wrong. You did something wrong. You should be held accountable for what you did, but they don't see it that way. It's kind of like Trump. He doesn't want to be held accountable for anything. And if you're a Trumper and that offends you, then you probably shouldn't be watching my show, because I'm going to talk mad shit about that asshole. The other thing that I was going to bring up, and this will probably be the last thing that I talk on, was the point I brought up earlier. People with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others. Well, yeah. You've already said that they lack empathy. No, they don't care about the feelings of anybody else. The only person they care about is themselves. I've watched this woman a million times put herself before anything or anyone else. Right now, she's putting herself before her own kids. She put herself before her own marriage. She put material things before her own marriage. It's a normal thing, I think. And maybe it's time for me to call it a night, because the one of my lights just turned off. But I think we got a lot of good topics covered today. There's plenty more to discuss, but we got the whole understanding of narcissism out of the way, or a general understanding of narcissism out of the way. So I'm looking forward to continuing this, and I'll see you on the next chapter.